Okay, so here's your science notebook check part 2 for the end of the quarter. Again, you should see I've got my table of contents all filled up. I should probably continue on to the next page as well. You can see areas where I've made little mistakes. I've made kind of little notes on that, so it's easy for other people to figure out what's happening. Kangaroo strategies, brain rules misconception check, and we have all the brain rules that we had before. So this is all review. If you want to see exactly what all of this is, I would go back to video 1. All right, the first thing in here that is relatively new is the self-assessment for your dissection objectives. So you should see all the pieces in here. You should have been yellow or green on all of them. You should have also made little goals for yourself here as well. It is two-sided, so that should be in there so you could constantly make new goals for yourself. This was checked already, but you should have your throat diagram and explanation, the thoracic cavity diagram and your explanation of the structures and functions. You should also have the abdominal cavity. Again, I have a little bit of the urinary beneath, but if you didn't see that day, you might not have that. And then since there's so much more there, you should have your descriptions of the structures and functions on the following page. This little part was extra credit from the day that we pulled out the digestive system as a whole loop. So the things that we removed separately and how we saw everything was just really a huge continuous loop. How you removed everything, things that you were surprised by, observations, reflections, that sort of thing. After that, you guys got the whole human body learning targets and how I was assessing you, and you should have kind of marked where you believed yourself to be on each of these learning targets. We also kind of defined what homeostasis was and picked that apart a little bit. You did a warm-up for the structures and functions, which I believe is this learning target right here. So that was another quick way for me to assess you. So you should have gotten a score back on here, and you should have been able to then update this based on how many greens and yellows you received. We then did a breathing probe, so you could say, all right, what is it that we need to breathe for? That should be two-sided. I should see writing on both. For our respiratory system model, the first one that we did, we briefly talked about, well, what are the good things that we have and what are the things that are missing, which were the limitations of our model. And then you might have had something below. So the yellow were things that you probably didn't have in your model. The green things were definitely things you should have in your model, and then the pink those are the limitations that we definitely could not have in our bottle models. Then you should have had the final draft of your first respiratory system model. Notice the little box. I should have the structure, like trachea, the material, like straw, and the function, which is the job. After that, we did take some notes on how the diaphragm and pressure and inhalation and all of those things work. So make sure that you've got those. Then we rebuilt our models after that day, and so I should see a different diagram again. What is the structure? What is the material that you use? What is the function of each of those things? Again, yours might look a little bit different just depending on how you built your model. Following that, you should have told me the pros and cons of your final respiratory system model. So the pros, basically, what are the things that are accurate about your model? What are the things that are represented that are actually true about the human body? And the cons and the limitations, what are things that you didn't have? Maybe the intercostal muscles or the ribs weren't really there, or some of the tiny things we couldn't represent, like capillaries or bronchioles, but you should have filled out both of these sections for both what was good and what was missing. This page right here was an extra credit foldable that you could have done. That's just kind of comparing your first to your final respiratory system model. After that, we acted out how the respiratory system model and the circulatory system worked together. And then we made a foldable. So you guys should have some guided notes on the inside that you did in groups and then together. And then you should have the diagram in there as well that we did as a whole class. And then these were the notes for today where we talked about homeostasis. This was based off of our warm-up that a lot of us were kind of struggling on. So you can see constantly there are problems that assault our body, like exercise, and then our body tries to maintain homeostasis by doing a whole bunch of things to fix it, which can trigger new problems, which come up with new solutions and new problems. So our body is constantly doing a lot of things to try to maintain homeostasis and stay normal. And then the last page, which this should have been a couple pages behind, but I got a little bit behind and didn't have time to put it in my notebook, was when we acted out the simulation of the lungs and the body cells and the heart, and you were all red blood cells, or perhaps you were a body cell, or perhaps you were the lungs. And what did that look like, and what were we doing, and how fast were we moving, and when were we switching carbon dioxide for oxygen or vice versa? And then you should have explained to me why it is that we need both of these systems and how do they work together, and the capillary should have been a really big part of that. So that's what we have so far. Good luck.